used to hold these amazing fight nights, and it was kind of early days before there were so many rules in amateur
Mm-hmm.
MMA. So these were the days before the helmets and all
Shin
that kind of
pads and
thing.
all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the rules weren't that well established, and the refs were a lot more relaxed about things.
Steve
And there was some
Mazzagari type.
there were some crazy nights. And I remember there'd be people crowded all around the cage, and then the window down one side, and people sticking their head through the window, and the sweat would be drifting off the ceiling, the condensation, and the fights were tremendous. There was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed those times.
Mm.
And it's a shame that that isn't happening now. There are some amateur events,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have many good kind of feeder events on this side into the pro MMA scene at the moment,
Yeah.
which is a shame.
I think that's what I posed the question to Don Madge actually in when I had him on the podcast about what South Africa needs for our athletes to go to the next level because I mean you've got obviously Drickus, Cameron, Don himself, a lot of South African guys and girls that make it and we've got a
Yeah.
really good high level here. But he was also saying, and I think Mike actually from PFM might have also said the same thing. If you're in America, you can fight basically every weekend if you
Mm.
wanted to, which we don't have as much. I know they themselves, Don and Mike, are putting together events in their gyms, trying to get that
Yes.
opportunity for fighters. But it is something that we really, I mean, I wish there was more of. I mean, you were
Mm.
showing us an event now. I don't know if it was amateur or not, but it was that event looked
Last fighter standing.
amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was that was an event. Basically, it was a national event, and I was working. I was doing some video for them and doing their. It wasn't a podcast, but it was doing their online stuff and that kind of thing. Um, but that was one of those events where they wanted to keep it very active, so it was a 30-second maximum on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
which as a jits guy,
It's
I'm
like,
like,
yeah.
oh, that's a real shame. However, it did mean that the fight was very dynamic.
Mm.
And unfortunately, it didn't. They went through to the last fighter standing finals, which is at the Coca-Cola Dome,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a spectacular night.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, they really there's fireworks
Yeah, the
and
production
the
quality looked
production.
amazing.
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant, and it was a really well done event. It's a shame they didn't manage to continue it forward going
Mm.
through the next year, but these are the kind of things you have to deal with. But um, you did find a lot of guys there from Muay Thai background going into that.
Mm.
Because if they could survive on the floor for 30 seconds, now they're back up again.
Yeah, and then they're
But
in
it
their
made,
world.
yeah, absolutely. But it did make for an exciting event,
Mm.
definitely. Um,
Why do you think there aren't more events like that? I mean, I know it obviously costs quite a bit to put that together, and you need sponsors, and you need, it's a financial thing, I'm sure, at the end of the day. But, why? Because now you've got some amateur, and I know there's SAMMAF that's now putting teams together and things like that, and taking people overseas, and giving people chances. But I think really the big guys, obviously in South Africa, are EFC
mm,
Africa, but it's like a very big jump from just deciding to want to fight to then all of a sudden
it's a huge
being
jump,
there.
yeah. And I agree entirely with Mikey and Don in that you need to have a very active amateur circuit. Um, and I think there's a little bit of ego involved
Hmm.
when it comes to clubs. I think because it's a big thing to open up and say, right, let's run this event, and our guys can win or lose. Um, but as you say, really, the more you fight, the better you get. I mean, your MMA record as an amateur isn't that important.
No, no one cares.
No one cares.
Mm.
So do as many as you can, and that was Anthony's mindset back in the day, and that's why he used to run the fight nights,
Mm.
um, so these guys can get lots of experience. Um, and I think we do need a lot more on this side. We do need the guys to be able to compete, once every couple of months at least, so they can build up that kind of um, environment. Because you take someone to the EFC, and it's their first EFC, and you can see the adrenaline dump happening, and
Mm.
you can see the energy drained out of them very quickly with that kind of adrenaline dump.
Mm.
And if someone was fighting every weekend, that wouldn't happen, and they'd
Yeah.
be a lot better in the cage. So I think it's important to reestablish that. Um, I remember Chris Bright ran an event, um, and this was actually Themba, talking about Themba.
Mm.
Years ago, Chris Bright ran an event, and this gives you an idea of what it was like back then. So me, Anthony, Themba, um, one or two other guys, we drove up to PE. So it was a long journey there, and then Themba fought, and Themba used to have a lot of shoulder dislocations. He used to have,
I've seen something like that. Even in
yeah,
UFC still, I think he's had a
yeah,
couple. Yeah,
yeah.
still has it.
So I remember he was fighting in the first round. I think it was could have gone either. I think the other guy had the best of the first round, but it was a good fight. But you could see Themba was like it happened.
Mm.
So so in between rounds, I'm stood between the ref and Anthony. Anthony goes up to Themba's, popping the shoulder back in,
So the ref doesn't see.
so the ref doesn't see. And I remember Anthony, and he was calling out to Themba. He said, "I don't care if you die in this next round. You are gonna win."
Mm.
And it was really, you could see he was obviously, Themba responds to that, and yeah, he managed to pull it off. One with a triangle, and then we went to the hospital.
Straight afterwards.
Yeah, and it was crazy in those days. It was a different, it wasn't so regulated,
Mm.
and sure, it probably was more dangerous. But yeah, but the times when they had the amateur with the helmets, I didn't like at all because those could be lifted and pulled, and
Mm.
the guys were getting more hits to the head, which is actually more dangerous than not wearing the helmets
Yes.
because the head's getting rocked the whole time.
Mm.
So I didn't like that very much at all.
Oh,
But
look, even those boxing ones for sparring, I mean, it still hurts when you get hit with those
mm,
on. It
and
doesn't lessen the impact. I mean,
no,
it actually when I've ever got punched with one, it actually like spreads it out more to a bigger area, I feel.
yeah, absolutely. It gives you the ability to be punched a lot more in the head before the fight's over,
Mm.
and that in itself is a lot more dangerous.
Mm.
Whereas, bare knuckles, as an example, I don't like bare knuckle fighting,
Mm-hmm.
but either the guys can't strike that hard in the first place, or it's you've got a couple of blows and you're out and the fight's over. That in the
Mm.
long run is actually a lot safer for your brain,
Mm.
which is kind of counterintuitive, really.
It's one of the big talking points that people always had in the earlier days of UFC, where all the boxing commentators were saying how brutal and how barbaric the UFC was. And Joe Rogan went up on like a newscast thing where they had them side to side on the screen and was basically just schooling this guy about how, it looks more vicious, but it's actually you take far less blows to the head. You
Mm,
don't have a guy standing there wobbling and taking all this brain trauma and
exactly.